I'm Margaret Ryan with Clean Skies News. Across the U.S., electric utilities are managing an aging fleet of generating plants, especially coal plants. Those plants are criticized by environmentalists as polluters, but they're also the backbone of our power system, producing just under half our electricity. Now, recently, natural gas plants have been ramping up toward a quarter of our electricity, and some environmentalists would like to see that fuel take a larger role. Joining us now from Phoenix, Arizona, to discuss the issues facing plant operators is Robert Peltier. He's editor-in-chief of Power magazine. You can see the latest issue right here. Bob, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Margaret. I appreciate the invitation.
Now, Bob, you have actually worked in the utility industry yourself. You are an engineer, and you have held the power post since 2003. We know the U.S. coal fleet is aging. When a utility is looking at its oldest coal plants, what are its realistic options?
Oh, good question, Margaret. And you made a very good comment there about the coal plants being the backbone of the U.S. Utility infrastructure. But you know, if a utility executive is going to look out over the coal infrastructure, he's really got like three different options that he's going to have to deal with. And I call them the 3 R's. He's either going to have to rebuild, repower, or refuel. So if he's going to rebuild, that's kind of like Duke Energy's Cliffside Unit 6 coal plant. And that's where they took and retired 4 units in order to build a new modern coal plant, very high efficiency with all the environmental bells and whistles, produced twice the electricity with significantly less emissions. Or he could repower. Xcel Energy's High Bridge plant, for example, they tore down an old coal plant and rebuilt a modern gas-fired combined cycle plant. Another example, Progress Energy Carolinas is taking 3 coal-fired plants out of service at their Lee plant and putting in a like-size gas-fired combined cycle plant. And the third option is refueling. And you may recall the acid rain program under the Clean Air Act began in about 1995, and utilities were searching for ways to avoid installing expensive air pollution gear. And one way of doing that was to bring in coal from the low sulfur Powder River Basin coal to replace high sulfur Eastern coal. And by refueling their facilities, they were able to meet environmental standards. Using natural gas is really the next step in that refueling process.
Well, now some environmentalists do point to the relatively low capacity factor of natural gas capacity here in the United States right now. And I've seen some say that capacity could be substituted for coal literally overnight. Would it really be that easy?
Well, if you want to do a substitute capacity, but remember, it's not about capacity. It's not about the age of the facility, and in many cases, it's not about the efficiency of the facility. It's the price of electricity produced at the bus bar is what is important. And so if we have an old coal plant that is paid for, that can burn low price, low sulfur coal, it might produce power at the bus bar of 5 or 6 cents. I looked today before I came over, the Henry Hub price for natural gas is about $5.50 a million BTU, which means in a combined cycle plant at 10,000 heat rate, it's producing electricity at just the cost of natural gas at 5.5 cents. And so now we got to amortize the several $100 million it costs to build the plant, and suddenly the price is very, very high. So if you go back and look at the Henry Hub prices in, say, mid-2008, they peaked at over $13 a million BTU, which means in a high-efficiency gas turbine combined cycle plant, the price of electricity just for the gas, without amortizing the price of the plant, is over 10 cents, maybe 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's more than just looking at the age or the efficiency of a plant. It's the price of electricity at the bus bar is what should be looked at.
Well, does to follow up what some of these environmentalists are saying, is the capacity really there, or are we talking about capacity that's really for, say, peaking power or for other purposes that can't be brought in and used as baseload? Is there really empty gas-fired capacity out there that could be used?
Absolutely. Yes, when we did the Dash for Gas, beginning about 12 years ago, up to about 5 years ago, there was significant number of gas-fired combined cycle plants put into service. The way that those plants were sited is you would look on a map and look for the main gas trunk line and look where the transmission lines were, and when they were close together, let's build a power plant. And so many of those plants were built, but the pro formas on those plants, when they were financed, if you look back also about the price of gas, it was in the $2 range. And so that meant the price of gas transformed into electricity was about 2 cents, plus amortizing of the plant's cost. You had a very good project. When gas prices went up, those plants no longer can operate as baseload plants economically. But to answer, those who say that there is capacity available for natural gas combined cycle plants, absolutely. It's also the issue, though, of the price that should be considered.
Well, now, despite these environmental campaigns against coal, we continue to see utilities building new coal plants. There's about 10,000 megawatts that has come on just in 2009, 2010. What's the attraction? Why are utilities still looking at new coal plants?
Well, when a utility executive is looking at new resources, what they are looking for is to moderate risk. And so you look at the range of risk that a utility executive has to be concerned with. We have operating risk, we have fuel risk that we just talked about, we have technology risk if you're going to go into an IGCC, for example. But you also have this fuel diversity issue. And so what you're looking for first is that firm baseload capacity, like nuclear, large, high-efficiency coal plants that can provide that base load. And then you look at that incremental load, which is the next intermediate. And right now, that intermediate load is being provided by gas turbine combined cycles because they can be started and stopped every day. And then the peak loads are provided by other more expensive resources. So if I'm an executive, I'm going to be looking at having a diverse fuel portfolio. I'm also going to want to make sure that those prices for that base load is kept as low as possible. So those are the kinds of things that are very important for a utility looking at new resources.
The federal role here, now how big is the role in the choice of generation or what to do, your options for your fleet? We know that the state regulators have a big say in this. What do you see as the federal role? Is that an issue?
Yes, and it's changing, and that's a very important point, Margaret. Until right now, the way that siting a new plant began was the owner or the developer determined the technology, okay, and the fuel source, and then the regulators decided what was best available control technology in order to make the plant comply with the environmental requirements. Now that is changing, and if you look at what has occurred recently, there are those who are pushing to make the technology itself defined as best available control technology for emissions. That stands the whole process, the whole permitting process on its head going forward. Some believe that an IGCC plant, integrated gasification combined cycle plant, should be de facto the only way to burn coal in the U.S. That is defining a technology which has never been really done before. And that's a concern, and that's something we need to watch for.
Okay. Robert Peltier, Editor-in-Chief of Power Magazine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Margaret.
I'm Margaret Ryan, and you're watching Clean Skies News.